Oh, water,
Yeah,
okay.
but the sun from.
This time I will call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone here this evening. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? If not, we'll operate under that agenda. The first item then would be consider the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting and the work sessions, which were all held on May 23rd. The council does have the minutes of all of those meetings. Are there any corrections at this time?
Move approval?
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 2 is a public hearing. This is first of 2 public hearings that we'll have this evening. The first public hearing is a public hearing on the ordinance that would amend Section 86-104B3 General Business District. To conduct this public hearing and present the information about this proposed change to the ordinance, I'll call it Ilya Gutman.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So this is a minor change to the general business regulations. It concerns the media storages, which are small storage units for individual use, less than 500 square feet. Right now, the ordinance requires conditional use permit for them, but it's a very old provision. Lately, we saw a lot of indoor mini storages, and staff, after reviewing that thinks that it's reasonable to separate mini storages with indoor access from the outdoor access. So the storages with outdoor access will stay conditional use, but the storages with the indoor access will become permitted use, because really the building is not distinguishable from any other business occupancy. So that's it went through the planning commission, and it was introduced in the council meeting last time.
Okay, thank you, Ilya. We'll open up for any public comment, either from the audience or from the council as part of this public hearing. Is there anyone here?
That's okay. Yeah, no mind.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak to this issue as part of this public hearing?
I'll just say it, as part of the planning or on the planning commission, there weren't any concerns at all, and it made sense, so.
Very good. Any other input as part of the public hearing?
Move we close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim to close the public hearing. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll now consider the ordinance. Are there any questions about the ordinance? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Steve, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Thank you, Ilya. The second public hearing is about Sounds of Summer. This will be a public hearing on the private use of public streets and parking lots during Sounds of Summer, which the dates of that would be August 18th to 20th. I'll call on Jason Anderson, Director of Public Works, City Engineer, to conduct this public hearing. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. Included in the packet, the council has a request letter from the Sounds of Summer Committee requesting street closures for both their events and the parade. Things are a little different this year than they have been in the past, where the location is now going to be on the vacant land across from the Schwann's headquarters on College in Saratoga. So in the packet, you've also got the proposed closure areas shown on a map, as well as detours for the project. The closure will be West College Drive from Greeley Street to Saratoga, and Saratoga from College to Greeley. And that'll be for all 3 days of the event, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at various times as identified in the memo. The parade will follow the normal path as well. The only thing that changes this year for the city is the detours. So city staff has prepared alternative detours, and we've submitted them to MnDOT already for a preliminary review, and we've got their concurrence that it's an acceptable detour. So I think that the city staff is well prepared to operate this detour and manage our side of that event. So you'll note that the detour takes Southview Drive to 4th Street instead of Southview Drive to Saratoga Street because we're closing a portion of Saratoga. If there's any questions, I can try to help answer them, and also the Sounds of Summer Committee is represented here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Jason. We'll open up for any questions or input as part of the public hearing on this request. Go ahead, Craig.
Jason, I'm looking at the second detour piece. And that looks like the parade detour, I believe. And that gets off at, by the Whitney statue. And then goes around on 3rd to Marshall Street and then over, looks like to 6th Street. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and those corners, you're comfortable that the semis will be able to make those corners?
Well, none of our detours, I'll say, are perfect. They're
Right.
definitely, no matter what route we choose when we do these detours, there are some tight turns.
Right.
That is wide with extra turn lanes at that intersection. I think they can make it. It'll just be how fluently they can do it. They may have to wait for some traffic to shift.
My only real concern is the 3rd Street kind of loop from Whitney over to Marshall Street. Is that all going to be like posted, no parking, at least on one side?
You know, we hadn't talked about that. I think it's already no parking for that first portion from College
Right.
back to Walnut, right? So we could talk about if we need to do more than that.
I just kind of thinking about how, because I use that street an awful lot and thinking about how narrow that gets if people are parked on both sides. We might want to consider just maybe not parking on one side, just so that semis can meet cars and not get things really jammed up there.
Yeah, we can look into that. I think that portion of the detour is the same as we've done in prior years on that end.
It is, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But we can look into whether we think we should do
Sure.
some more no parking in there.
Yeah, everything on like Marshall Street knows that's all nice wide turn areas there. It shouldn't be a problem at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
And again, this is only for the parade.
Right.
You know, so it's only for a few hours.
Right, yeah, I get it.
Other input as part of the public hearing. Brock Clay, your chair of Sounds of Summer, anything you want to say?
Nope, Jason clarified it pretty well for us, so.
Very good. Any other input as part of the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Craig to close public hearing. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the public hearing. And the motion does pass. So we'll take these one at a time. I'll now consider a motion related to the private use of public streets and parking lots.
Move approval? Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. And then the second action would be the approval of the parade route and detour.
Move to approve.
Second.
Steve, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Thank you, Jason. Anything more about Sounds of Summer you want to say?
It's our 15th anniversary this year, so it's been, it's going well. We're moving venues again, so, and then we'll probably have to move again in 2024. Probably behind the Gambler again, and then if all goes right with the Aquatic Center, then we can finally maybe get a permanent home over there.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We'll move then to the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the screen that are on the consent agenda this evening. So on the consent agenda would be consider the approval for a raffle permit for Holy Redeemer Church on August 16. Consider the approval of raffle permit for Holy Redeemer Church on September 23rd. Consider approval for a raffle permit for Holy Redeemer Church on December 29th. Consider the approval for a temporary on-sale liquor license for Holy Redeemer Church. Consider the grant of utility easement to MMU location at 1008 West College Drive. Consider the award proposal for the wastewater sanitary manhole sealing and relining project. Consider the resolution authorizing the execution of the MnDOT Airport Maintenance and Operation Grant. Consider the project ST032 Lot 2 Block 1 of Schwann's Corp. This is the parking lot repaving improvements at the Relco, near the Relco offices. Consider the resolution approving the plans and specifications and ordering the advertisement for the bids. The declaration of bicycles as surplus property for the Marshall Police Department. Consider authorization to declare vehicles as surplus property for the Marshall Police Department, the Merit Center bonding request, and finally, consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for separate discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Amanda, seconded by C, to approve all of the items on the consent agenda. Discussion on that motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Agenda item number 16, request for a map amendment for rezoning for the Minnesota State Armory Building Commission. Location would be 1103 Michigan Road. Once again, Ilya Gutman.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So this is a request from Minnesota State Armory to rezone. Can we have a map? Screen, please. To rezone the lot that they own from agricultural to industrial for future development. When staff looked at that, we decided it makes sense to rezone the entire area south of Michigan Road. It's all shown as industrial and new comprehensive plan, so it makes sense to do the whole thing at the same time. It went through the public hearing in the Planning Commission, and it was introduced at the council meeting last time.
Thank you, Ilya. Any comments from the Planning Commission?
No, questions about, what's going to happen out there, but nothing really of concern related to the rezoning request.
Okay. Any questions the council has? If not, is there a motion for the rezone request, the map amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Agenda item number 17, request for a map amendment rezoning by First Premier Bank. The location is 1420 East College Drive. Once again, Ilya.
Thank you. So this is really a mall. So the request is to rezone it from B4 to B3, general business. It's the intent is future development, and we all know that mall doesn't function as a mall anymore, and the whole concept is kind of going away. So staff thinks that it's better to practically get rid of the B4 district as a whole. So it recommends to increase the area of rezoning for the whole area in that around the mall from B4 to B3, and it's shown a different pattern, the request and the proposed rezone area. At some point, mall had a PUD attached, but this rezoning will, since that PUD has never been acted upon, this rezoning will take away that old PUD. The new comprehensive plan showing it as a mixed use, and this new B3 zoning district will meet the requirements for mixed use. So the recommendation is to rezone it. It went again through the Planning Commission public hearing and through was introduced last time. the council.
Thank you, Elia. Once again, Amanda, any comments from the planning commission?
No, it's B3 all around, so they really weren't concerned. It seems to make sense for the area, so.
Okay. Questions the council has?
Yeah, just looking at this, so part of the mall parking lot is already B3, is that correct?
No, the whole thing is before right now.
So Sherman, go back to the aerial. Oh, I was thinking of Peterson, I'm sorry, okay, yeah, now I got it, all right. No, I'm clear now.
Okay. Other
Thank you.
questions that the council may have? If not, you have the request and you have the recommendation from the planning commission. I would entertain a motion to allow the rezone.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion does pass. Thank you, Elia.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 18, consider the amendment to Article 30-2, the surface water management of the city code of ordinance. Consider the adoption of that ordinance then with that amendment. Once again, I'll call on Jason Anderson to present this item.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a pretty simple ordinance addition and revision to be in compliance with the latest MS4 permit through the MPCA for our stormwater management permit. It just requires that we have an ordinance that regulates the bulk storage of de-icing chemicals and that they are stored indoors and on an impervious surface, and that the practices are in place at any site of storage that reduce exposure or the ability of the salts to wash off into the public waters. So this is just an ordinance that helps meet the intent of the permit.
Okay. Any questions?
Besides the city of Marshall, who else stores bulk salt in Marshall?
Lyon County.
Lyon County,
Okay.
I'm not
MnDOT.
prepared to answer that. SMSU might. I know we've started to map the locations where we know that there are, and I just would have to look that up, and I'm not prepared
That's,
to
you don't
answer
have to look at it. I was just curious. That answers that.
There are not very many
I
entities.
said, I wouldn't think there'd be a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Steve,
Second.
second by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. Okay, agenda item number 19, consider the resolution authorizing the execution of the MnDOT Cooperative Construction Agreement. This is for the overlay on US Highway 59 in conjunction with the project that will be done resurfacing to Minneota on 68. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. Another pretty short and simple item for your consideration. This is an agreement for the MnDOT project, as you mentioned, the ultra-thin overlay that'll be coming through in their fiscal year '23. I don't recall if it's going to be yet this fall or if it'll be next year that it gets completed. I'll report back once I hear what construction schedule. But there's some sanitary sewer manholes that need to be adjusted in the project limits, and MnDOT's cost participation policy would have us pay for that. It's estimated around $3,000, so it's pretty insignificant project cost for our wastewater utility. But this agreement memorializes that, as well as some other maintenance items like crosswalk maintenance long-term that will be our responsibility.
Question for Jason? If not, is there a motion?
So move.
Motion by Craig, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Agenda item number 20 is a discussion item seeking direction on the future work and the funding and the maintenance of the murals that are located on 3rd and 4th Street. I'll call on Sharon Hanson, City Administrator, to start this project, or start this discussion, and with you, of course. You can introduce Jim Schwartz.
So we have been in contact with individuals, both building owners and Jim Schwartz, former SMSU, right?
Right.
Yeah, former SMSU professor of art, about both murals, 3rd Street and the one fairly close to here on 4th Street. They both need repair and upkeep. We began this discussion, I believe, in 2022, got an estimate for the 3rd Street mural in late 2022, and have a new estimate for the 4th Street mural repair. Since that time, we have spoke to the 3rd Street mural building owner. There's a potential proposed building remodel project that may disrupt the 3rd Street mural, and all indications from the 4th Street mural building owner, which is Studio B, there's interest from him to have some assistance with upkeep of the mural. The original agreement was in 2011. It was a 10-year agreement. It expired in agreements, plural, for both 3rd Street and 4th Street, expired in 2021. And that was really an agreement between the artist, MAFAC, and the building owner. I've also gotten some really good advice from City Attorney Pam Whitmore about First Amendment rights, because it would be nice to maybe have something recordable so that when there's future building owners, there's some awareness. And if the city's going to put funds towards this, there's some lasting legacy to these funds. And I'll have the attorney comment on why we can't do a recordable document and what the city's role could be. But essentially, after talking to individuals, it seems like what was done in 2011 was a really good idea, and it was a good process. And we probably want to look at somehow renewing or putting forth new agreements with the building owner and cooperating with MAFAC. We currently do not have specific funds budgeted for mural upkeep or repair. I would argue there's funds available, especially in community services. But it is something we probably want to budget in the future so that we have knowledge. I estimated $5,000 every 5 years. Jim can talk about the type of paint and why that would be. So, is this something the council wants to direct staff to work on? Do you want us to budget for this repair? Do you want us to contact MAFAC, work with the building owners? So that's really why we're bringing this here. And that's my request. And I will also turn it over to the city attorney to talk a little bit about freedom of speech. And then if Jim wants to talk about kind of what's needed for both sites.
Yeah, so thank you, City Administrator. I wanted to give you just a brief background on the First Amendment piece that goes along with murals. And so that when you're having your discussion, you have some of that information available. So the reason why that these are done through art commissions in collaboration with cities is that the First Amendment protects against regulation, impeding individuals' First Amendment rights through government regulation. Okay, so any type of ordinance or our contracts recording something on the property, that is a governmental regulation that may impede somebody's First Amendment speech. And so even if the current property owner's like, yeah, this is great, let's record it on there, that would be binding to future owners of that property. And because it runs, things that are recorded on the land run with land. And so we can't impede that future speech of somebody who owns that property down the road. So that's one thing. And then when you have the mural being taken care of by the city. There's nothing wrong with collaborating with an independent organization as far as, funding it, but the actual decisions about the picture, how it looks, all of that should be done by an independent, non-governmental entity, because then there isn't any argument that the government is somehow regulating the speech. So that's kind of the basic part of why there's oftentimes these third-party art organizations who are making those decisions based on the actual colors, content, that type of thing in the mural. The other thing to think about in this situation, which is a little different, that Sharon didn't touch on, that independent entity could work out with the artist, is that one of these murals has, the artist has retained the copyright for it as well. So outside of the First Amendment, the artist has that copyright, that they retained that copyright rights. And so that has to be negotiated back for that release of copyrights back to the independent art organization. The other artist on, I believe it's the 3rd Street mural, has already handed that over by agreement to the independent art.
I believe it's the 3rd Street mural where they maintain copyright,
Okay, so
although we
it's
are
the
working
switch.
with one of the artists who worked on it, one of the two.
Yeah.
And 4th Street, I believe, is
So
the one
4th
that
Street's the
released.
one who,
Yeah.
they already released that. Yeah, is that right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's the end of my staff report. If anybody has questions before you hear from the former professor, or before your discussion, I'm available.
Any questions for Pam? Jim, you want to make some comments? Or you just- Jim,
Most people call the, oh, you want to come up there? Yeah. Okay, sorry. I know it might be dangerous, but lectern. The 3rd Street mural, often called the history mural, that had some upper panel glass that was adhered with a thin coat, and back in about 2016, 17, pieces were falling off on the sidewalk. So the city wanted that taken down, and we worked with Southwest Glass, and we took that down and tried to figure out how to redesign panels to replace those. Becky Weifels, running Mayfac at the time, contacted Josh Sarentitis, who was the main artist name on the documents, the contract and building permit, things like that. And he was living in Buffalo, New York, couldn't come back, so he suggested it be done locally. So we worked up some options and ended up doing digital sign panels through Western Printing that are up now. And I think it turned out really well. You can read the text much better than you could. The previous stained glass, semi-stained glass things were deteriorating and it's hard to read. Anyway, it worked out good. Then there was some damage that cropped up later due to weather, some peeling of the fabric off of the hardy board that supports the mural. And I did up some estimates and scheduled some repair work with Southwest Glass for last fall. But the Southwest Glass lift, the orange lift that we used, was in the shop. Got pushed back by harvest equipment, and it just got too cold to do the repair work. The glue wouldn't adhere in those low temperatures. Then some winter damage, and then the building was sold twice. And so now we have a new owner, and he wants to do some development. And it comes down to, do you take down the mural or do you work with it, repair it? I think it's possible to punch windows in as the owner's proposing and then adjust the mural, working with Greta McLean, who is one of the other artists that's on the project. At the time, Josh said that she likely would not come back to do any repair work when we did those upper panels. She was quite busy. She runs a mural organization up in the Twin Cities and was spending some time in Mexico. You might remember the George Floyd image. She actually did that one. So if you look at her website, look up her name, she's really kind of a powerhouse on murals in the Minneapolis area. Anyway, what we'd like to do is involve her in the restoration work. I think in talking to Sharon, to try to, all the estimating I did and the work that was planned, delay it, roll it over, and have her come back and do that work along with the work that Derek might intend to do, punching the windows through and then adjust the mural, what you can do paint-wise and moving the bees, things like that. I think get Greta involved back in it as one of the original artists. The second mural we call the music mural. That one is less complicated. Worked with Greg Wimmer on that. Some of the area around the trumpeter is deteriorating. The thick paint is cracking, and either moisture came through from lack of insulation, and the freeze-thaw cycle chewed up the mortar, and some of the bad places need to be ground out and then re-mortared and then repainted. But we have estimates from him to do that. It's just something that needs to be done about every 5 years or so in order to maintain it. And you can do some temporary touch-up work, but it's often best to go back in and do it proper. And I'm sure the building owner would like the mortar joints repaired before you would do any painting work over it. There are some products, like out of a caulking gun that look like mortar, but they're not. You could quickly repair it, but it wouldn't be proper to do that, I think, to the joints. But Greg has done the original painting on the music mural. He's done the first repair work that was done in 2015. His rate is very reasonable, and he's, I guess, ready to go. He can schedule that in. And as Sharon said, I think one of the things you forget on projects, and I've worked on quite a few in Marshall, the Mrs. Whitney, the Red Baron Arena sculpture, worked with Randy Walker on that, and other projects. You should really factor in maintenance and upkeep as part of the project. The sculptures tend to be more bulletproof. They'll last longer unless a semi comes, you were talking about semis earlier, comes around the corner and takes out Mrs. Whitney. Even if somebody would break off or bend off her arm, it can be welded back together and touched up and repatinaed. But the murals tend to deteriorate over the surface and are a little harder to maintain. The Red Baron sculpture, I think, is going to last a long time, and that can be repaired in segments. So I think that's in good shape.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you have more questions to it.
Well, I certainly think we want to see these murals maintained over the time. I think we have an obligation to do that. Probably the real question is the mechanism to do that, given the city attorney's comments, and do we engage a group of volunteers? Do we engage MAFAC, have a subcommittee, and then allow them to take the lead on that, and we provide them some funding to do it? That might be one option. So,
I think the overall, and I've looked at all the past history on it, you're basically trading the city's willingness to supply some funds to keep up the murals they invested in early on with partnerships with organizations like MAFAC and grants, legacy grants, trade that upkeep for their willingness to keep the mural.
right.
And I think, you have to look at the buildings changing owners. I never thought the History Mural building would change hands twice since the panels were put up on the upper word panels, the repairs were done. That and trying to involve the original artists as much as possible. So that's
Other input from the council?
I think it's good to continue. I think they're a very valuable part of the community, and I definitely think that we need to figure out how to make it more of a legacy project that it's understood how they are maintained and continue. And again, our relationship with the building owners, I think it's important, while we can't put it as a covenant on the property, I think just to go in with both eyes open and understand the value that has to the community. Hopefully, the building owners continue to see that as a positive for their investment also.
Any other input?
I fully support what Craig said.
Sharon, the direction you're looking for? Any more detail?
I think there's consensus to upkeep the murals and work with the city attorney, the building owner, and have Jim continue to provide consultation, so.
Sharon, do you see that relationship then being MAFAC and the college, the program at the college? Is that kind of what you see as the kind of the community relationship as the art
I
board?
think the city attorney kind of did you not like the original agreement in 2011 using this art organization? I know the mayor mentioned a committee or a commission, that'd be another avenue, and maybe you want to comment on that.
So whatever makes the most sense as far as what's ever easy. I didn't know if this group is still in existence or not. That was part of the original agreements, but that would be the easiest. So that would be with respect to, we would just have an agreement with them for, they would have any oversight of the mural itself, and then we can enter into a maintenance agreement where we take on the maintenance part of it, but we wouldn't be having any decision-making with respect to the content. And then we just need to make sure that we get the copyright issue resolved.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Then to the agenda item number 21, the resolution approving the special law, the sales tax authorization. As we know, we requested the legislature to give the city the permission to go to a vote of the public for the with the question of should the sales tax be extended. The next step in that would be the action by the city council. Sharon?
Yes, I think you explained that really well. The Senate approved the tax bill on May 21st. The governor signed the tax bill on the 24th. So we're really glad that we have the opportunity to continue to talk about the Aquatic Center project with potential funding through sales tax revenue. The tax bill did note that we would put this forth to the voters on November 7th of this year. And as part of the tax bill, it does require that the governing body further comply with this tax bill by having the governing body approve of the special law. And in the packet is the resolution to do so. I did include an additional form that the city clerk would then submit as well to fully meet the requirements of the law. And then if it's adopted tonight, we'll continue on informing the residents and the voters, and anticipate the special election on November 7th.
Council have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I move resolution that the City Council of the City of Marshall resolve Minnesota laws 2023 regular session, Chapter 64, Article 10, Section 14 is hereby approved.
I'll second that.
By Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion on that motion? Not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. The motion does pass unanimously. We'll move to agenda item number 22, the cannabis / also lower potency hemp products interim ordinance. I'll call on City Attorney Pam Whitmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. So you heard about this last meeting, and here it is in front of you. So tonight, this is the first reading and also a call for a hearing and I'll explain that in a minute for the next meeting. So as we've been discussing, this bill has passed. It's created a whole new licensing structure, which will be treated, the best way to explain it is similar to alcohol. There's an Office of Cannabis Management. So that is going to take a while for them to do their rulemaking. There's no really predictable time when that will happen. The bill itself allows for a interim ordinance to have the study of what's going to happen with those higher level cannabis products in our community, and it's for all those cannabis businesses. So the bill has different licensing, as I mentioned before. There's the medical marijuana licensing, and then there's the lower potency hemp, both retail and manufacturing, and then all of the cannabis product businesses, so that's the higher level. So that interim ordinance under the bill itself is only for a pause to study that higher level. And as you may recall, you have an existing emergency ordinance that was put in place last July, and it expires July 12th. And as a result of that, we had a discussion last meeting about these lower level products in the current, as they currently stand, they're called THC edibles, edible cannabinoids, and that's under Minnesota Statute 152. The new bill is renaming those to lower potency, and they are really sunsetting Statute 152 in March of 2024, I believe. And so as that transition happens, council had really discussed last time the benefit and given the direction of putting a pause on those lower level potency, hemp potency and hemp consumer products as well, to be able to see what the different regulations are and have that study continued with that. So in order to do that, that would be under the city's police powers, under our charter, and also under the zoning code, which is 462 of state law. So that's a lot of background, but that's why we're doing it outside of the bill itself, and that's why there needs to be a hearing on it at the next meeting, because it's under that 462. So that would put a pause on everything but the beverages, the infused beverages that are now legal to sell at exclusive liquor stores. So that's what you see in front of you as far as the interim ordinance. And that's the end of my report. I am available for questions.
Okay, so the action item would be the introduction of this interim ordinance. Are there any questions for City Attorney?
So the new interim ordinance would just allow the sale of THC beverages,
At your exclusive liquor store.
the municipal liquor store, not any of the edibles, which are also legal right now.
Correct. That's how it's written. And so this is under 462, which is what we're using the authority to do that for. That can't last more than a year, and council can decide of its own choosing to repeal that before that year's up. Under the bill itself, on those higher level businesses, you can have an interim ordinance in place till January 1st, 2025. We're not currently doing that, so that would mean that the council would really need to have a workshop at some point to talk about what those zoning
Right.
wants to be.
The next question I'd have on those lower level edibles, which are legal, what is the city losing in revenue by not allowing them to be sold in the city of Marshall? Are we losing sales tax revenue or?
So you're not losing any sales tax revenue at this point because they're not collecting that revenue until they actually license. So the Office of Cannabis Management is also licensing those lower potency at retail sales as well as manufacturing, but the retail sales is what that percentage of sales tax is coming in at. So they have to be licensed first. They can't license until they set up the office and do their rulemaking. Again, there's no time frame that's been advertised on that other than their thoughts that it would be up to a year to
The
do
other part of his
rulemaking.
question probably is, are the edibles considered food products?
Yes.
So,
They're they're edible product that is now legal and they're getting transferred to a different, under this Office of Cannabis Management. They are going to be subject to sales tax, if that's what the question is. So the sales tax is 10% of the retail sales, and then whatever that amount, that 10% amount is, that will be distributed 80% for the state, 20% to the local governmental entities, but based on the proportion of where where those businesses are, I assume it will be by county. But it will be to the cities within that county, but they're going to be having to look at the proportionality. So it's not even a full 20% that Marshall, we would be getting. It's very confusing.
So 20% equals 2%, correct?
Potentially, depending on how many different businesses there are in the city.
They're getting sales tax on them now where they're selling them.
The,
They're pre-processed food, so they're not like you're going and buying a loaf of bread. I mean,
the retailer is collecting sales tax on those.
so the
But
answer
it's
would
gonna-
be yes, we're losing sales tax.
Collecting our 0.5% cities tax on them too.
Yes.
So, and I guess what I'm driving at is it's coming. I think it's in our best interest to figure this out sooner than later. It's just, I agree we should do a work session, but we've had a year moratorium on the THCs now. We've done nothing. There's cities that have capitalized a ton of money on this stuff. We haven't. I mean, I'm glad if we do this, that area can sell it because the liquid THC has become a booming business. And I think we've hamstrung our brewery here in town that they can't even do it. That's just my opinion. Maybe we didn't, I don't know, but I know cities have captured a ton of money on it. And you talk to the microbreweries that make this stuff, they call it liquid gold because it's a lot cheaper to make than alcohol.
I think the point of the interim ordinance is that the Office of Cannabis Management is setting up the system for licensing, but also for testing too, which is a big issue. And it's also an issue with law enforcement and public health. And all of that really needs to be worked out. It's exactly the same issue with the low-level THC edibles that we had last year at this time, where there was really no regulatory guidelines that came with it. Now with the current legislation, they have a system that there will be the regulatory guidelines that would impact or would address issues of testing, of what levels it would be, the place and the space and the regulatory control that communities and the state would have.
I have a real concern about trying to go into it before we have a good roadmap and a good structure set up both by the state and by us. The last thing I want to see is somebody get started thinking that, holy cow, let's get in here right now, and then 50 or 60% of the people that have started can't get a license or don't stay into it. And I mean, I'd rather make sure that we've got this all mapped out before we go into it, because I'd hate to try to stop this thing and turn it around.
And Pam, I think as you said in the previous discussion, that this is subject to expedited rulemaking at the state level, which means things will go, fairly fast in terms of how that structure is set up. So by fairly fast, it could be a number of months rather than a year.
Moves at the speed of government.
Hey, don't get in its way.
I get what Jim means too about not just not sitting on it either. Well, we do need to wait for some further guidance as well. So, we'll get to work as soon as we know a little more.
Well, and so the council needs to keep in mind, you can repeal this at any time. So if you want to move up and do some kind of, have a discussion about how you want to, you're not going to be able to prohibit these, any of them, high level, low level, nothing. The state has given us a glimpse into what they consider reasonable regulations. We can't license, we're not going to be able to license. As that's all covered by the state, so we will participate and they'll get feedback for us. We can call them registration. So really what you're looking at as a council is what types of reasonable zoning regulations that you want to have. And part of that discussion is, do you want those reasonable zoning regulations to apply to all types of products? Or the lower level products differently than the higher level products? Or, so there's all of those discussions that I really think the council in studying this and having that discussion can decide what the best path is for Marshall as far as those, all the different types of products. You're right, they're going to be here. There's no doubt about
I
it.
guess my point is that we should start working on it now and not just keep pausing. Because I know it came up discussion where maybe we can sell this at our municipal liquor store, which is fine, some of it is. Dispensaries are not small facilities. Not that I go into a lot of them. I mean, I myself have never used the stuff. I have wandered into many dispensaries though, just because I'm interested in it. They're big buildings. This is a big business.
And are you talking about municipal dispensary right now?
No, I'm talking about just, I was in Alaska, they're all over the place. Take a cruise to Alaska, they're right in the port.
Okay,
So-
well, we need to get this discussion back on point, though. So the interim ordinance, the action item here is whether or not to call for the public hearing.
Was it to call for, but also allow the sale of the THC beverages at our local municipal liquor store, correct?
So that is written into the ordinance to allow that. Right now, because of your emergency ordinance that's in place, that isn't allowed at the moment, based on that interpretation. But we can have that calling for the repeal of that. I believe that we put a resolution in the packet for that as well, to repeal that emergency ordinance, so then the municipal liquor can go ahead and sell it.
And we can do this we could repeal that tonight and then enact our other interim ordinance tonight yet, or do we have to call for a
This
public
is
hearing?
the reading of it, and then we call for
Yeah.
public hearing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? I would entertain a motion.
To call for the public hearing.
To
I would-
call for the
I
public
would make a
hearing.
motion to call for a public hearing.
I'll second that.
Motion by Amanda, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Pam, do you recommend that a separate motion on rescinding happen tonight, or?
So that was, if you rescind it tonight and you don't do them at the same time, you could potentially have other,
you got a 2-week
retailers. And so that is really a policy decision. I would recommend that you do everything
Right.
step in step.
Okay.
Otherwise, we have an open door.
Right. Okay, with that, unless there's any other comments on that agenda item, we'll move then to agenda item number 23, to consider appointments to various boards and commissions. The council did meet in a special session earlier this evening in a posted session. And based on interviews that were held at that time, I would recommend that Sarah Stoneberg be appointed to a first term on the Planning Commission. That term would expire May 31st, 2026, and that Bruce Lamprecht be appointed to a first term on the Airport Commission. That term will expire May 31st, 2026. I'll offer that as a recommendation to the council and entertain a motion to affirm.
I move approval.
Motion by Craig, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to Commission Board Liaison Reports. Craig?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Airport Commission met and discussed a number of items. We discussed brought the Airport Commission up to speed on where the HRE building is right now, and discussed some of the options and how we move forward, and got a report on crack sealing and some of the other work that went, and also discussions with the MnDOT Aeronautics about some of our technology and like landing assisting and that type of thing. So just kind of a up to speed, the airport commission has decided, and I fully agree, that irregardless of how big of a plate of issues that we have, we are going to meet monthly just to make sure that dialogue goes. And I know that after our regular meeting, the group working on upgrading our zoning ordinance had also met. So I'll let Jason finish up with that. He can update that if you want to do it now or at your regular piece.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the JASB, the Joint Airport Zoning Board, met after Airport Commission, and that process is moving along. We're working towards putting into practice an updated airport zoning that meets what they call the commissioner's standard, which is readily accepted by the MnDOT Aeronautics folks because it meets the state law. So working through that process, had some good discussions over whether we wanted to move off of commissioner's standard and go into more of a custom zoning, but I think we're sticking with the commissioner's standard route at this point in time. So we'll keep that process moving, and hopefully in the coming months, we're able to bring something back to the city council. Yeah, one other quick item was at the airport, there's going to be some cameras put up. That'll be going out there on an FAA website, so pilots can get a 360 view around the airport and the runways to check weather conditions and things like that. You see a lot of them in Colorado and Canada and maybe a couple other states, but not a lot across the U.S. yet. But I think they're starting to deploy them in Minnesota, and they selected our airport as one of them. No cost to us aside from making electricity available and having a location for them to be placed. So it's kind of a nice development there.
Thank you. Anything else, Greg?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Steve?
Mine have not met.
Amanda?
I did miss the Public Housing Commission meeting last night, and then Planning Commission's tomorrow night and EDA next week, so nothing from me.
John?
No, nothing.
See?
DEI has the Juneteenth celebration coming up on Monday here at the Independence Park.
I think Justice.
Oh, it says Independence Park. 3 to 7.
Yeah,
Did it move?
It was originally Justice, and it got moved to Independence just because we have some park equipment there that just made it easier to keep it at the same location, but.
And so they're partnering with the library to do some movie showings as well too. So things at the library and then things at the park. And then CVB, they are looking at writing a letter of support for the new aquatic center, so it's very exciting. And then library, they did submit did the budget, so they're looking at us and the county now to look at and review the budget and approve it. And then they've been doing some minor renovations and updates at the library. That's all I have.
Good. Jim?
I have nothing.
We'll move then to council member individual items, Craig.
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Steve?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Amanda?
Nor do I.
Jim?
The only thing I have is for tomorrow night, inviting everybody to the City Band concert. It's actually going to start at 5:30. It's a full schedule, full evening of music. We got the Boulder Choir at 5:30. 5:45, you got the SMSU Daycare. 6 p.m. Cast of the Children's Theater. 6:15 is Amen, which I don't know who they are, but I heard they're really good. And then you'd asked about the men's choir there at 6:30. And at 7 p.m., we have the City Band will play with Bob Burns on cowbell. I would come just for that.
No, the rest of it will be great. So, yeah.
And there's food trucks. It's a good community gathering. So all of us listening out there, come out to the park tomorrow night. You can buy off the food truck, ice cream, and again, Bob Burns on the cowbell.
So with Bob on the cowbell, it's Move Over Elvis.
That's all I have.
Well, that's good. Steve?
Lord.
Nothing.
John? With that, let's move then to staff reports, starting with City Administrator Sharon Hansen.
Councilmember Mulesky did mention Juneteenth, so I appreciate that. Actually, at Independence Park, just for a timing, it's 3 to 7. I know there's something happening at the library and before and after that, but 3 to 7. And then, as most of you are aware, because we brought this to council, it is a day where City Hall has to be closed, city business cannot operate. We have to follow the state holiday listing per state statute. So we do have to observe that holiday among others that are listed in state statute. So that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Questions for Sharon? Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. Progress being made on the Third Street and Lion Street construction project. Concrete being poured today and for the rest of the week for sure. See some street pavement on the post office block was poured today. I think the parking lane on one side got poured. They poured some of the bulb outs at Third and Main, some colored concrete there with some different scoring in the concrete for the sockets. So you'll continue to see that. And then there's also electrical work being done on the block. So as the electrical work gets done and that starts to get out of the way, we'll keep pouring concrete. And as we lead up into July 4th, I think we should expect the concrete work to be finished. So if things keep going well. So that's going really well from my perspective. Other projects, we really don't have word on when they're going to start yet. I think it's going to get really busy after July 4th with all of our other construction work. But we are having pre-construction meetings next week for the water project we're doing for MMU, where we're doing the highway crossings and borings. And we'll have a pre-construction for Channel Parkway next week too for the resurfacing there. One other quick update, the two bike trail projects, the 2025 C Street and Southview Trail Project and the 2026 Lion Street Trail Project are both receiving additional funding. Received notification from MnDOT this week that with the bipartisan infrastructure law, I think there's more money dumped into these programs. One way they chose to deal with that was to fully fund projects that were not fully funded. And then also the funding split, I think, changed a little bit. Instead of 80-20, it's like 81.42 and so slight changes there. The Lion Street project gets the biggest bump, a six-figure bump in grant funds to make that fully funded where it was not prior. So these are good things. I think that's all I've got.
Okay, any question for Jason? Pam? No, nothing. Okay. You have the remaining items, which include the administrative brief, the building permits, and the upcoming meetings. Is there anything else to come forward this evening? If
Move
not,
we adjourn.
motion by Craig,
Second.
seconded by Steve to adjourn. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We are adjourned.